This is Talk the Devils, the athletic show dedicated to Manchester United. Coming up, we dissect defeat in the Manchester derby, a result that's left everything being questioned once again for Manchester United, the way that they played, the formation of the team, the future of the head coach, you name it. We'll get into all of that, as you'd expect, because that's the sort of result and the sort of performance that leads us to do that, obviously. I don't know whether it's fortunate or unfortunate or as you'd expect. I'm not really sure how to tee this up, but everyone is here for this. So hello, Laurie. Hello, Carl. Hello, Andy. But before we talk about the football, we'd just like to pay our respects to Ricky the Hitman Hatton, who has passed away at the age of 46. There were some lovely tributes made to the Hitman at the game earlier. Both sets of players wearing black armbands and a lovely minute's applause. Perfectly observed, as you'd expect, from both sets of fans. Obviously, he was a huge blue. He'll forever be synonymous, really, with Manchester City walking out to Blue Moon and everything else when he became a world champion boxer, but very much a Manchester man, born and bred in the city, supported and celebrated by both sets of fans. His boxing brilliance united Manchester, really, and I know that many, many people had him as their hero in boxing, and he'll be sorely missed as well. So rest in peace, Ricky. Okay, very sad news that today, and it obviously set the tone very much for the pre-match setting at the derby. Carl, you were there. Once the football got going, though, it just was a very difficult watch for Manchester United again, wasn't it?
Manchester United played okay in places, but they lost 3-0. And
were any of those places the Etihad Stadium?
When Adam Crafton tweeted, Manchester United played football, but not in the places that are conducive to winning games. Well, I'm paraphrasing. I'm sorry. I shouldn't paraphrase the tweet. But it's difficult right now watching Amorim's team in the amount of things that need to go right for Manchester United to manufacture a 3-on-1 compared to the handful of things that need to go slightly awry for an opposition to get a 3-on-1. That balance is concerning. And yeah, I'm not quite sure where to pitch my level of disgruntlement at this, because it was a very deflating defeat after a small period where I was quite excited about watching Manchester United play football again.
Well, I think the build-up to the game was pretty positive, actually, in some ways, because it felt like Manchester United fans were optimistic, Andy. But then once they went behind in that game, it just felt like they were never getting back into it, really. And like I said in the intro, it's kind of left people spiralling a little bit, hasn't it?
I asked how United fans were feeling on my X account, and 70% predicted a Manchester United win. And it seems slightly ridiculous now, but I spoke to some City fans before the match, and they're like, this can go either way. They were uncertain of their team as well. They felt that there would be goals. They didn't know which side they were going to score, but it's not a result we see in isolation. It's 1 win in 5 now for Manchester United. I think it's 3 in 10 if you include the pre-season, and United are failing to beat some pretty average teams. This isn't even a great City team, but they are Manchester City at home, and they've got a lot of top players, and Haaland was exceptional, but the mood is really low, I think, among Manchester United fans, and not just in the immediate hours after the game where everything's very raw. I think people have got some serious and searching questions, and I'm sure we'll talk about them in this podcast. But a bad day for Manchester United.
Yeah, Laurie, I've only just got back, actually, from the stadium. So, yeah, if it does feel a little bit raw for all of us, that's because we are recording this on Sunday evening. Normally, we'd be huddled together trying to console one another by looking each other in the eye across a microphone. But in this YouTube world now, this is how we do our post-match debriefs. But it just, I interviewed Bruno Fernandes after the game, and you just found yourself asking the same sort of questions that we've asked so many times already. And I ended up asking him, do you feel like the team is making progress? Because despite us trying to be as positive as possible and trying to find the glimmers of hope in the way that the team has started the season, results aside, that game again makes it so difficult to do that, doesn't it?
Yeah, it can't be considered progress, can it? When United have lost 3-0, they're, I think, 14th in the Premier League table, 1 place up from where they finished last season.
That's progress. Yeah, it's progress.
When you look at a sort of table of points gained since Ruben Amorim took charge, and United are bottom of that table for the teams that have been in the Premier League for that entire period.
31 games, 8 wins, 7 draws, 16 defeats, minus 13 goal difference, a win ratio of 25.8% now in the Premier League.
I mean, that's excruciating, isn't it? I mean, similar to what Carl said, there were moments in that first half when I kind of was thinking, okay, it's sort of coming together here. You know, and you look at the stats, you know, United actually passed the ball more than Man City, 489 compared to 414, you know, 55% to 45%. I know that perhaps is dictated a little bit by the way the game went and City not really having to do anything once they went 3-0 up. But usually when they've been in that kind of ascendancy, they have just strangled United. So you're sort of thinking, well, I think that's partly to do with City having so many players out. And that's probably what gave people the excitement maybe, or the anticipation, those 70% of people thinking United were going to win the game because City were vulnerable, and they were vulnerable in that first half, but United just could not benefit in those moments where they did have a kind of 4-on-4 attack. You know, they kind of pick the wrong pass, or, you know, Ahmad tries a bicycle kick, or, you know, Sesko's judged to have handballed it. You know, little moments like that where if they'd have scored first, maybe this game does turn out a little bit differently. But I think you had Erling Haaland, a player, you know, kind of possessed to make the game go his team's way. And then, yeah, I mean, ultimately City did miss 2 pretty big chances as well to make it even worse. And I know United did, you know, Mbeumo and Casemiro, if they go in, it's maybe a slightly different complexion on the final result. But it just feels like United are soft when teams can really go at them. For all the, you know, passing moves that look quite promising, the kind of positions they get in, this sense of perhaps the system working in certain ways, ultimately teams can score against United far too easily, and then that changes the whole dynamic. And yeah, you come away from a match like that thinking all kinds of thoughts.
Yeah, Carl, it felt like they were lacking belief and conviction in themselves, but also the way that they were trying to play at times. Like Laurie says, in possession, they did look bright in moments, didn't they? But then when it comes to, say, the first goal, for example, you're waiting for someone to put a tackle in. You're waiting for someone to match the energy and onus, really, that City are putting into that move. You know, you want someone to trip Doku up, clearly, but tracking Foden's run, you know, reacting once the ball drops the second time to Doku. There are so many little things within that they could do differently to prevent the goal. But how many times have we said that really small details in games are deciding these matches time and time again, because they don't seem to find a way to ensure that the small details aren't counting for everything, if you know what I mean.
I know exactly what you mean. And you said how many times? And the answer is too many times. There are too many individual failures and too many individual moments of confusion and little foibles to put it down to just the individuals. And you then need to start looking at, is this system providing the correct benefits in order to minimize these little foibles and mistakes? Are you covering up the weaknesses of these players? And the answer to that is no. And then you go to the next question, which is the manager willing to change his system in order to provide these, in order to give a greater security blanket or safety net to these players to minimize these mistakes? And the answer to that is no. Amorim's repeatedly told us he's not going to change until the time he leaves the changes. So now we are all in this very bizarre phase where we have a manager or head coach who is not going to change what he wants to do. We have a football team and a collection of football players that do not play with the correct confidence or conviction necessary to win games of football. And you can say big games of football against Manchester City or Arsenal, or smaller games of football against teams like Fulham or Grimsby. And now we're going, well, then what happens? And the answer to this is, I don't know what happened. The answer to this is just this bizarre, frustrating, long period of Manchester United play football as if it's a dress rehearsal. And there are times where I'm stood there going, no, this is opening. Look how many people are watching. They've
That's
paid
a great
money.
Analogy.
Stop. Frustrating. I'm deeply frustrated by this football team.
Yeah, I think we all are, Carl, aren't we, to be fair? I was just reading through some of the emails that we were getting in Oh, we have been getting in since the final whistle. A lot of angry people, as you'd expect after losing the Manchester derby. But Tom Andy says, I find it hard to put into words how hard of a watch United are at the moment. It seems apt to say that considering some of the noises and the analogy that Carl just brought out there. I thought we were actually playing well, but then just imploded for the second and third goals. I kind of agree with him, to be honest. I mean, the second and third goals, United actually started the second half, it felt like, with a bit of impetus and then getting City on the back foot. And the nature of those two goals, it's just soft, like Laurie said before, basically.
United started the first half well. For the first 10 to 15 minutes, United were okay. And then it was Manchester City until half-time. It's quite interesting, Bernardo Silva, when he was interviewed at half-time, he said, Man United have improved a lot since last season. They've won one game since last season. Is this what you're being told in the prep?
You'd obviously been listening to our podcast.
Those halftime interviews just seem like they're a case of players getting through them, though, doesn't it? Like, they'll just say anything.
Yeah.
I'll just fill my obligation of 3 questions and let me go off onto the pitch.
Mate, I want a slice of orange. Let me go.
It is a hard watch, and I think a lot of fans are really struggling with it. I think they're struggling to see clear signs that things are getting better. Results is one thing, and probably the major thing, but I think there is a lot of frustration with the system. You can see little pockets. Didn't play badly against Arsenal, first half against Fulham, first half against Burnley. But from the outset, we said this manager needs wins, and he's not getting wins. And this road's not going to go on forever. He's still getting a huge amount of support from Manchester United fans, from the club as well. But every game now seems like a huge game, and we shouldn't be judging this on a game-by-game basis. And every game takes an age to come round because we've been knocked out the cup competitions or not qualified. And every game looks pretty daunting. Burnley at home looks daunting. Chelsea, world champions, looks daunting. Sunderland comes after Brentford. The massive, massive games. And I feel like I'm seeing the same thing with pressure getting to some of the players. You get the new players coming in. I thought Bryan Mbeumo was Manchester United's best player today.
Yeah.
He looked bright. How long before Issa comes to it,
No, please don't. He's been the ray of sunshine in this season so far.
He has. And honestly, I hope now it comes good. I hope it comes good for Ruben Amorim. I hope he's a big success. But we've got to critique properly. We've got to do our jobs. We've got to reflect the mood. I know there's a huge amount of frustration from Manchester United fans. And I get that because you've just lost the derby against a team who not even the best version of themselves. And there's just so many questions. Unfortunately, none of us have the answers. We don't know where it goes from here.
No, it does feel like that, Laurie, doesn't it? Where, we've tried our best to explain some of the changes that the club have tried to instill over the summer. We've obviously talked at length about the new signings and about what impact, people hope that they will make. But I just can't stop myself from bringing up last season. And I'm thinking back to Ruben Amorim coming in halfway through the season and all that chat about him not wanting to come in halfway through the season and the benefit that we would see the following season. And I remember saying at the time, well, next season's going to have to be bloody good if this is what we're putting up with. And despite there being bits of positives and things to cling on to and, signs in those first few games that things were beginning to look a little bit better, you just wanted more. You expected more this afternoon. We were all talking about a Manchester United side who were perfectly set up to take advantage of the way that Manchester City play. We were talking about a City side who had key players missing. Now, as it happened, maybe there was more first choice Manchester United players missing in that game than there was City players in the end. Perhaps United's starting 11 were the one that got hampered more, but there just has to be more to it than this, doesn't there? It simply cannot continue to be so below what we all expect it to be. I mean, the number of people after the game who you just sort of heard, well, it's United. It can't be like that. They've got to try and aim to win the league. They've got to try and aim to do this. They've got to try and aim to do that. But they're so far away from that. It's like, I don't even know why it's worth the conversation. It's just maddening, really.
I mean, I can sense it's maddening because I don't know if there was a question in there.
I don't know. I've been working on this game already now for 12 hours.
You came very, very close to the, not the Dowie, but it can't get worse than this. It can.
Yeah. Mick McCarthy.
I mean, in this kind of group therapy session that we seem to have on a regular basis now, I think that was a much needed sort of unloading from you there, Ian. And I am, I'm agreeing with you because at no point in Amorim's reign has there been a sense of momentum, has there? I mean, you had the Europa League a little bit, but even that was sort of fly by the seat of your pants and kind of, a lot of good fortune. So there's been nothing to kind of get to grips with other than him being a very compelling person to listen to and having, being impressed by the way he takes matters head on. By the same token, that has kind of splayed out much of what usually happens behind the scenes in public view. So you'd say about, he says he wished he could take the job at the end of the season. Well, that's kind of like quite a stark thing to say as your first sort of, in your first sort of media engagements as Manchester United manager. And all the changes that have been going on, they're done with absolute best intentions, but they don't know that they're going to work. This is the sort of same, it's different people making the decisions now, but there's no kind of guarantee that these things will happen. And obviously they've spent money. You have Sir Jim Ratcliffe at the top of the club who was there at the game today looking, head in hands with Sir Alex Ferguson behind him with that kind of sort of expression on his face that sort of, wincing, what have I just witnessed? Maybe he's chiming with Roy Keane, sort of absolutely sort of amazed that there hasn't been a booking from United, either team, but that United haven't gone down swinging almost. But so we come to this point now where sort of Andy's alluding to it there. You sort of get into where's this going ultimately? And okay, I think Chelsea has big significance to it. We're at a point where Carl is having to walk home from the Etihad, via Deansgate just to calm down. It's a long old walk that, and I would love to know.
We've got to a point where I can't actually formulate questions. I just have to empty.
Let me just give you another stat, Carl, just before you tell us what you were saying to yourself, Carl, on this walk home and how high your voice got in your voice notes to your mates. Just a stat for you. So who do you think had the most touches in the opposition box by a Man United player in this game?
You're going to tell me a centre-back, aren't you?
Not quite.
Is it Manuel Guy?
It's Patrick Dorgu.
Okay.
I'm not surprised.
Who had 12 touches. That's more than any player on the pitch. So Erling Haaland had 9, for example. Mbeumo had 9. Benjamin Sesko had none, according to the stats that I'm looking at, which I guess the shot that he had after the alleged handball doesn't count for that. But how does it happen that you've got a 20-year-old fullback is kind of like, in this game, your most, advanced, offensive, significant player in terms of trying to create something. And he does do some good stuff, certainly athletic. He gets up and down. He that ball for Ahmad, I think, was a really good cross, but it doesn't feel quite right to me that you've got then Bruno Fernandes, for example, the guy that, creates chances, and he's not faultless, obviously, but, he's this guy that the team has been built around for so many years. And he had no touches in the opposition box either. I mean, how's that all working out?
It's by design, right? The 3-4-3 ideally works to create overloads and have a spare man, and a spare man who's very often a surprise feature. And when United win the Manchester derby, the surprise feature is Lisandro Martinez picking up the ball, foraging forward towards the halfway line, pinging it in for Ahmad. When it doesn't work well, you have situations where Patrick Dorgu is the person getting the ball loads, or Matthias de Ligt getting on the ball loads against Grimsby, or there is a distinct risk and worry and concern that the way Amorim wants to play football overcomplicates things in a league and a time period of the Premier League that is increasingly going to a more simplified, direct, give it to the big lad in the mixer and try and cause havoc time period. And my concern is Ruben Amorim. The Manchester United job is incredibly difficult. There have been a series of managers that have come in and been faced with all sorts of problems and struggled to take those on, and new problems have arose even when they've been successful putting away some problems. And I think the difficulty and the bit where you start getting the alarm at the back of my brain keeps going off is when the head coach seems to start creating problems of their own rather than focus on solving problems. And I do not think it is reasonable to ask a 20-year-old wing-back in Patrick Dorgu to be your most important ball progressor, to be one of your most important on-ball creators in the final third, and also to be one of your most important defenders in 1v1. Because there were 2 or 3 times, particularly after that first goal, where Haaland and others went, the spaces behind Dorgu and Luke Shaw doesn't look great. Let's get the ball there and feast. Dorgu's 20 years of age. I'm not sure that's a sensible thing to do. Luke Shaw is the veteran, but also Luke Shaw had a really bad day at the office and didn't enjoy having a handle of Erling Haaland. And okay, we can talk. The spell just after that second goal, where Haaland has another shot and it bounces off the woodwork, and United are completely at 6s and 7s, and there is no one, absolutely no one there to put the foot on the ball and get it to calm down. And I'm looking at the dugout and I can see Amorim turn around and go to Mainu, get on, and you're just like,
As he said in his pre-match press conference that Mainu was doing sort of last season.
And this is the thing of, yes, you've just returned from an international break and Casemiro's returned back a week early after his exploits at Brazil. Perhaps Casemiro is not 100%. And that's why you've gone with Manu Ugarte in there.
No, he said he wanted more mobility. He was quite honest about that in his pre-match interview, that was why Ugarte had started ahead of Casemiro.
And he played the full game last year when they won, obviously, right?
Yep.
So was that in his thinking?
He played very well last year as well, Ugarte.
He played all right today.
He did all right.
Bits.
First half.
In terms of sort of jumping to get the ball, win the ball, because they were the moments that United should really have benefited from in the first half. We were talking about, obviously, in the podcast before this, where we were saying balls in behind, latching onto City as they try and build out. And I think Ugarte was doing that, but then there was also just bad moments. I mean, that pass to Shaw for the Haaland second goal. I mean, Shaw should do better, certainly, but United were on the attack, and then he just plays such a conservative ball to his back foot, and then all of a sudden United are on the, trying to retreat, and Maguire, and then Haaland's onside in his own half. I mean, how a goal like that is scored at this level, I don't know, but
don't really understand why all the United players were in the City half either, to be honest. But perhaps that was just that moment because they were in possession and then suddenly out of possession so quickly.
Maguire had to jump, didn't he?
High up the pitch. Yeah, I mean, just to circle back then on some of the decisions that were made for the lineup, Andy. We've sort of touched a little bit there on Ugarte and Mainu and the decision to start Ugarte ahead of Casemiro in midfield. But you had Altay Bayındır, of course, who Amorim was so open about would start the game. You also then had Benjamin Sesko making his first Premier League start as well. What do you think about the decisions that were made? Were you surprised by anything on the team sheet?
Not really. I said in the last pod, I thought Bayındır would start. I think if you've got Mount and Cunha out, then it's going to lead to the changes. Mazraoui, I was pleased for him that he came back. It was
I didn't mention Mazraoui. Yeah.
Sesko, it was his first start as well. Ugarte's not been playing well, but I could see the logic because he'd done well in the same game last season. But when I saw the lineup, I'm not thinking, okay, this is it. This is we're going to go, because I don't have a lot of faith in the players. Don't have a lot of faith in the team. It's not very good. If I look at what first attracted me to Manchester United, there's certain elements of, I used to watch wingers. I watched attacking play, and I'm prepared to compromise almost everything because football has moved on. And if there's this new tactical genius coming along who's going to deliver us a successful team again, that's fine. The talk of the club DNA, the legacy, the people who've been here all the time, and they've all gone as well. There's hardly anybody left. I'm prepared to compromise that even if it means Manchester United start winning as well, because there were people who got a little bit long in the tooth and harking back to the days when everything was great. But you need to see the evidence of the progress, and when you're not seeing the evidence of any progress, when the results are bad, when the team is struggling to score, it leads to the type of frustration that we've got now. And United are 14th in the league, and City deserve to win that pretty comfortably today. I thought this season would mean fewer games, better preparation in training. United would be better drilled going into matches. United lost at Grimsby. That result is absolutely horrendous. That League Cup should have been taken seriously for this season. I'm not saying it wasn't taken seriously, but I keep going back to that result against a fourth-tier team. Again, in isolation, I'll take any bad day in the office. But how many wins have we had since the manager came in? And even now, I wouldn't say sack him. I would say that a manager needs a couple of years, several transfer windows. I back him. I back the new ownership structure, the decision makers. I hope that it works for Jason Wilcox, for Omar Barada. I hope that the players are successful. I think that the signings who were made in the summer, I can see good, solid reasons for all of them. But results have got to come. Words and communicating well will only take you so far. The results have got to get better, because I just sense a real frustration now, and not just in the hours after a Manchester Derby defeat. And with good reason. This season is already turning out to be hugely disappointing.
Yeah, I was going to save the sort of chat about Amorim's future till a little bit later on, but you've definitely opened the conversation there, Andy. I mean, Carl, before this game, the start to the season, we were open-minded about whether it was good, whether it was bad, or whether it was somewhere in between. We still felt like the start to the season needed more for us to be able to say unequivocally what it was. Clearly, that result today is not in the positive column. The performance doesn't feel like it is either, but there's still time to save the start to the season before we start saying anything too definitive in that sense. But how does this change? Because part of my struggle earlier to find a question was that I don't see where it changes. I don't think that Ruben Amorim will change the way that he plays. I don't think that the club are anywhere near a decision yet to change the head coach. I don't think they should be either. And I don't know if the players are still close enough to some of the things that Ruben Amorim wants them to do to be able to have faith that the results will change in that sense. And even when I listened to Bruno Fernandes talk after the game today about some of the tactical details and some of the reasons he felt that United had trouble in the midfield with players not being aggressive enough in pressing and pushing forward from the defensive line, they're still the type of stuff that we've talked about before. So this is exactly why I'm finding it difficult to know what to ask, because I don't see what changes. I don't see what's easy to change either, unless you're going to start changing the formation and all that. And I just don't think Ruben Amorim will do it. Do you?
No, I don't see him changing, which means we have to go to the next level, which is Ruben Amorim going to lose his job? And the answer to that, at the moment, appears to be no. There seems to be very little appetite from Ineos and senior executives at Manchester United to remove him. Andy has just spoken very eloquently in that he believes the Manchester United head coach should be given more time. So more time seems to be the indicator, and we will continue on this journey of uncertain football until there is either a greater appetite for Ruben Amorim to leave, or there is some sort of inflection point in Manchester United start winning games again, and this is just a blip in the road. At this point in time, in all heart, in all honesty, I do not believe things will get dramatically better anytime soon. There is very little evidence based on what I'm seeing and what I'm feeling in my gut that Manchester United are going to start, that Manchester United will win back-to-back games before the end of October. I'd be surprised if that happened. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'd be surprised if they won back-to-back Premier League games. And that is a totally bizarre sense to have. If we were to write down the reasons why Ruben Amorim is keeping his job, I believe we would have to write 3 or 4 reasons before we can get down to, I believe he's doing a good job. Because I do not believe he's currently doing a good job right now. Is that enough to keep someone in place? That is entirely at your discretion. I was there in Bilbao. I was there when he lost that game, and he very clearly said, I'm asking for faith right now because I have nothing to show you for backing. And if you are listening to this and you are a doubting Thomas, I'm not going to stand in your way. If you do not have faith that this is going to go right, that is fine, because right now there is very little obvious evidence based on what is currently going on the football field to suggest things will come right. There's potential future evidence. So you can say things like when Cunha comes back, or when Mount comes back, or if one falls in off Šeško's shin, he might get a purple patch. You can say things like that. I think if you look at the reasons why Manchester United might finish in the top 8, they have a lot more to do with the fact that Aston Villa look pretty bad rather than Manchester United look decent. And if that's not enough for you and you are moving away from Amorim, so be it. Andy uses the word moderates. I don't think I could describe myself as a moderate. I don't think if I tried to describe myself as a moderate, the United moderates would have me in that group. I am somewhere in like a weird cross-section with a cigarette and a black coffee going, mate, this is painful.
Laurie.
What an image. Well, when Carl said he doesn't think they're going to win 2 back-to-back in a row before the end of October, I was like, I wonder if there is an opening. Obviously, it's Chelsea next, but then it's away to Brentford, who have looked a bit shaky this season, and then at home to Sunderland, who have, to be fair, I mean, Sunderland have started really well, haven't they? So maybe I'm totally getting, excited over that little, potential oasis in the desert. I think there's going to inevitably be conversations around Amorim's position as we go along if this keeps on like his. He's having them himself.
Laurie, Brentford and Sunderland are above Manchester United in the Premier League table.
I know, but that's what I'm saying. I'm trying to claw back some, modicum of hope, amid all this.
So I was looking at those two as bankers and then just look at the table. Like,
not bankers. Just, you could sense potentially how those 2 victories back to back could happen. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
But yeah, obviously reality then bites. And if reality bites hard in that period, I don't see how you can keep going with this just because at what point do you call it and say it's not going to work? So do you think the period then between now and the next international break, which would be after that Sunderland game, so Chelsea, Brentford, Sunderland, that could be a point where a decision is made? Is that what you think? Possibly. If they lose all those 3 games, how can it not be? But by the same token, you hope it isn't. The only thing I would say is that I don't think Amorim will change his system, but did he hint at that, or did he at least open the door to that possibility after this game? Because he said, I won't change until I decide to change. Is that a first moment that he's sort of hinting that maybe he would? Because I sense that there must be players that are thinking, we're trying, honestly, we'll do this for you because we want to be with you. We don't want to have another manager come in. We like what you're doing, but it doesn't fit with what we were best at.
I was in the room. It did not sound any different to previous press conferences where he's saying, look, Ruben Amorim is doing this because he believes this is how you win games of football, and he believes that the juice is worth the squeeze.
It's a hard squeeze, isn't it?
But this is the thing. This is a very,
my wrists are really tired.
It's a very hard squeeze, and it's probably an expensive squeeze. As Andy said, this will probably take more transfer windows to get done, and it will probably take more months, more players, more churn. And if you want to commit and you want to get this done, fine, go for it. So be it. But I would be very surprised if United changed to a back 4 between now and, say, Christmas, if only because when did he have the time to coach it? Surely, you were in America. Did you have any indicate? There are phases of play when United shift into a back 4, but to make that forget this bit and to remove so many parts of what you've also been trying to teach. So when City crossed the halfway line, United are dropping into a 5-3-2 to sort of remove that and go, actually, now it's 4 at the back, 4 at the back, 4 at the back. I think it would require such a come to Jesus moment that I have very little evidence based on what I see in those press conferences that he's capable of doing, which is fine. Look, we've spoken about this before with other people to do with Manchester United, in that this is one of the hardest challenges successful people will ever have in their life, where eventually, as a successful person, you'll reach a junction and someone will tell you the best way for you to continue being successful is to stop doing the thing that has made you successful up until this point. There was a point in time where it became quite obvious to Cristiano Ronaldo, well, it became quite obvious to us watching Cristiano Ronaldo play in Europe, that if he wanted to keep scoring goals, he might have to change his game a little bit. and he didn't want to, and it created a situation where it created a situation where he didn't get on with Erik ten Hag, and there was a press conference, there was an interview done with Piers Morgan, and now Cristiano Ronaldo plays in Saudi Arabia. And look, he's scoring loads of goals in Saudi Arabia, and he's enjoying himself without having to change who he is as a human being. Good for him. And I think that might happen for Amorim, which is that he might change, but he might not, and then continue being a 3-4-3 manager at another football club somewhere else down the line. Erik ten Hag's Bayer Leverkusen were playing football in a similar manner to Manchester United 23-24, and I don't mean that as a compliment, because he couldn't change. I'm doing a hand motion here if you're listening to this on audio. I can't see Amorim changing, so we're just in this weird, stuck period of the beatings will continue until morale improves.
It was a bold appointment and a brave one, and if it maybe Manchester United needed that if it comes good, and the fans have certainly got behind him through thin and thin, but his formation is becoming the point, which is the stick to beat him with all the time. So come up today against City, they played a 1-1-5. United stuck with the formation, which Amorim always does. I think if you spoke to most Manchester United players, and I have done, on the record, what's your favourite position? And they say things like, well, I've always played in a 4, but, these lads have spent like 12 years playing as a right back or the centre half, and they're being asked to play in a different position.
That's why it probably would be more straightforward to step back to a 4-3-3 than the transition that they made last season, where they were playing that way and then stepped into Amorim's system straight away for that game at Ipswich. But
like muscle memory, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I take Carl's point that he's not had time to coach the specifics of that system, and he hasn't played it either, has he, since the very, very early days of his managerial career.
And he didn't play it as a player, by the way, either. This is only his philosophy as a coach, and he's got a very clear philosophy, and it served him extremely well in Portugal, and I think his appointment at Manchester United was welcomed.
Sorry to interrupt you. Do you think he's got enough experience around him to chat through these sort of things? Because the one thing with Amorim, everything has gone so well for him in his managerial career. There's been very little setbacks to this point, and this is obviously an absolutely monumental setback. But you look at everyone around him, that they're as young or as inexperienced in some ways that he is, and even though at times this type of figure in a coaching setup has been a token gesture, Brian Kidd behind Pep Guardiola, or even Mike Phelan latterly with Manchester United. Would someone like that be chatting to him and offering him a bit more of an experienced mind to say, have you thought about this, to challenge him a bit more? Is he being challenged enough, do you think, in his decision making?
Well, there's a few points here in. Sometimes setbacks can be the making of you. Absolutely, in football, coaches bring their own people along. That is totally normal. And the best or worst example of that is when David Moyes took over Sir Alex Ferguson and got rid of all of these assistants who'd been hugely successful at Manchester United. And you can talk to Moyes about this now, and he'll like, I totally get the argument, but I want my own people. Ineos want their own people. And this is pretty normal in life. All over, absolutely. If you look at the age profile of the coaches around him, you don't think these people are hugely experienced or working in a new country. I think it'd be really unfair of me to criticise them because I'm not aware of their inner workings, because they're a closed shop. They're a really tight bunch. But it's not just a football perspective, Ian. It's the media environment. It's working in another country. There's so many things. One of the best things Mike Phelan did with Alex Ferguson was take care of the commercial demands put on him and just go, no, no, no. It's such a big beast of a football club that each of them assistants are different. I did quite a lot of work with Rui Faria last year, and he's quite funny. He's like, it was all right. It's all right for Jose Mourinho until about May 2018. I went, when did you leave? Oh, all right. It was May. And it was said in jest, but he was good cop, bad cop. And we saw it with Erik ten Hag, with, there's different versions of who was a good cop and who was a bad cop. It can be really weird in football management. Brian Clough and Peter Taylor, it can be really unconventional as well. It's worked for Ruben Amorim so far in his career, but the Portuguese league is very, very different to the English Premier League, which is the biggest league in the world. Every opponent's tough. In Portugal, you're dominating matches. You're expected to win games. There's the big three, a big four occasionally, a push. And he's come in quite early in his career, and a brilliant career so far. And you can see his virtues. You can see how well he communicates. You can see that he's a rising star. Wouldn't have been surprised if he became Manchester City manager, for example. But if you're losing every week, people aren't going to have it for so long.
Yeah, it wasn't really meant as a criticism, Laurie. It was more just to sort of ask the question about who we think might be challenging the decision to play 3-4-3 around the club. It might not even come from the coaching staff. It might come from the senior players. It might come from members of the leadership group. You know, obviously we've spoken about Dan Ashworth's reticence to move in this direction. You know, that's been well publicised. But you wonder now in this sort of moment where there are huge question marks again about the direction, about the formation, about the moment really for the club. Who is the one making these sort of challenges to him? And is he questioning himself even, I guess?
Well, I suppose him being so open and honest, I'm sure he is questioning himself. I would say that Jason Wilcox is the one that would be expected to, and I think is, pressing him on the kind of finer details of the game. He's obviously a student of it, having, won the Premier League with Blackburn, and that's his role at United, to be that guy on the, training pitches basically and talking to Ruben Amorim, daily. I asked Amorim actually in the pre-match press conference about his statement after the Grimsby game that they would kind of, sort things out during the international break, which, a lot of people, myself included, kind of interpreted as discussions with the hierarchy rather than, the training pitches. But he said everything, in the end, he answered and said, we did everything. I spoke to Jason, I spoke to Omar Barada, chief executive. I kind of spoke to my staff and got on the training pitches. So I think you've got that. I think there's a few people that perhaps might be, asking that question. I'm sure the players amongst themselves, I don't have any first-hand sort of information on that, but I'm sure they must be, asking the question, is this the right, way to play the game? I mean, even Jason Wilcox had that sort of, I don't know what the right word is, not doubt, but kind of, I think he raised that, I'm told, as a kind of, as a question when Ruben Amorim was first floated, even when Erik ten Hag was originally, expected to leave the club around the FA Cup final, when the first contact was made with Amorim, and the fact of this sort of back three system was something that was discussed, by the hierarchy. But, Jason Wilcox has absolutely established a very good relationship with Ruben Amorim since he's come into the club, and he's fully behind it now. So, but I think it just sort of shows that you're always going to have these questions in football. I'm sure even the teams that are successful right now, I mean, I looked, sorry to touch on them, but Liverpool earlier in the day, Alexander Isak isn't even in the squad, and I'm sure you've got people sort of asking Arne Slot, are you sure you're making the right call there?
Well, if it had finished 0-0, they definitely would have done. That's how right? Easy and media narratives work, isn't it?
If former academy graduate Hannibal Mejbri didn't handball in his box inexplicably.
Was it Hannibal?
It was Hannibal.
Okay. Yeah.
He looked gutted, bless him.
Yeah.
He did. He had his head in his hands for a good 30 seconds. But yeah, beside the point a little bit. But yeah, there's people that are having these questions. Yeah,
the other side of it as well is that, the players still have the question mark on them as well. It's not like we're certain of their quality and they're just being used incorrectly either. That's also an element of the conversation where you have to point legitimately at some of them and say, are you... Luke Shaw did it himself after the Europa League final. Are we good enough to still be here? So, it's not even certain that if Ruben Amorim was to go against all these principles, decide to play a completely different way, that it would completely transform straight away. That's the other aspect of it.
Completely transform, no. Do you believe this team is playing for the sum of its parts?
I don't know, Carl.
I actually don't know the level of this team anymore, to be honest.
I don't, Carl. Not given the reputation and talent or perceived talent and remuneration of all of these players. I would expect Manchester United to be above 15th in the league last year.
It should be European.
Do you believe this team is performing to par? And
no.
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 Yeah, but Carl, can you say that is unequivocally the system?
I do not think the system helps. And
Okay.
I think now we are getting, I think we can get into the weeds about this in how do we minimize the bad things about Manchester United and the way they play football? Haaland's third goal, where all those players are in the other wrong half, and it is so easy for that one-man steam train to get through. I think many Premier League managers or many managers with Premier League experience and perhaps have not been successful in the Premier League and are elsewhere now would say, if you are playing Manchester City with Erling Haaland, you do not do that. You do not create those situations. I think the system right now does not properly platform these players, and it causes these players to have, for lack of a better term, brain farts.
I thought you were going to say the word malfunctions then for some reason, but I like brain farts.
Brain farts. And I think it's not just an Amorim problem. I think this squad is susceptible to brain farts. This squad has been susceptible to brain farts under Amorim. It's been susceptible to brain farts under Ten Hag.
That's the podcast headline sorted.
This team, for the last 5 years or so, is prone to conceding goals in bunches because they concede one, their proverbials fall out, and they forget their processes and they forget the things they're doing. And I think one of the problems of that is you try and get players that don't have brain farts, which is why at the moment we're quite impressed with Cunha and Mbeumo and others. And also you try and get to a system, or you try and find a way of explaining football, and you try and find a football system that doesn't overload them with information and gives them a thing of, if you don't know what to do and you're freaking out, just do X. But
if Ruben Amorim really thought it was that simple to change the formation, wouldn't he have done it already?
A former US president said, just because it's simple doesn't mean it's easy. And I think we get all the time loads of email questions. The problem is this, simple. The problem is this, simple. And I think, yeah, maybe they are quite a few simple ways to fix Man United. I do not think they are easy. And that is the annoying, difficult, horrible bit. I can't see this getting better anytime soon. And better as in top 6. But I do think there are ways you can get better as in perform to the sum of your parts and you might finish 8th.
Can anyone offer one final line just to sort of sum this up in any way, shape or form?
I thought you were going to say something positive. I was just going to say, love Bryan Mbeumo. I know he didn't get everything right tonight, but he just keeps trying. He's got quality. That volley was a thing of beauty.
That was a hell of a save, wasn't it? Even in that, you're sort of like looking at, Donnarumma, someone we talked about being linked and the money not being right and whatever. Anyway, yeah.
We didn't even mention Andre Onana having a stormer on his debut.
We don't need to
Sorry.
Or Rasmus Haaland scoring
or
any other narrative that's been sort of rammed
Marcus
down our
Rashford
throats.
setting up as Barcelona absolutely hammer Valencia in front of about 5 people. Look, tomorrow's another day. Manchester United. Today was a bad day against City.
The problem is we've got to wait a week for them to try and sort it out.
And
That's
it's a
the other
problem.
issue, isn't it?
It's a problem.
Yeah.
It is, because the club is that big and the demand for stories about the club is that big. And when you lose a game, they tend to be negative, and Chelsea's a difficult one. I've not given up on the manager and I've not given up on these players. I know some fans have, and I think I can understand that frustration. And if you lads have got different views to me, I totally respect that. But it is still very early on in the season. And we are seeing the same repeat patterns. It is very, very frustrating. And I still can't believe there's not been consecutive league wins. It's just the maddest stat ever, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I do, you're talking about 8th. There has to be a serious uptick for Manchester United to be finishing 8th from where we are at the moment.
I'll leave it with something Bruno Fernandes said to one of my questions after the game, where he said he thinks, in his words, that people, when they talk about Manchester United, are living in the past too much. They're talking about things that happened in the past, both positive things that happened a long time ago and some of the negative things that happened last season or the season before. And he said that together they know that they can change things themselves in this moment. So let's hope that happens. Let's hope that the Chelsea game is different. Let's hope the mood of our next post-match podcast, please. Is different to this. Because, I'd like to be able to ask questions coherently for 45 minutes. But anyway, let's leave it there. Andy, Carl, Laurie, thank you so much for your company. Thanks everyone for watching as well, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care, bye-bye. Thanks for watching this episode of Talk of the Devils. Don't forget to hit subscribe if you've not done already, like the video, and also get involved in the comments too, and click the bell to make sure that you never miss an episode with myself, Andy Mitten, Carl Anker, and Laurie Whitwell. There's also our social channels at TOT Devils on Instagram, X, and TikTok. Thanks for watching.